What did you do when you realized your best friend's dad was following you? I first noticed Mr. Whitmore's silver Nissan behind me 3 weeks ago when I was walking home from basketball practice. It was 6:30 p.m. and getting dark. I saw the headlights following me for 4 blocks before the car turned into a gas station. I didn't think much about it then. Jared's dad probably just finished work and happened to be driving the same route. But then I saw the same car 2 days later, parked across from the coffee shop where I work weekends. Mr. Whitmore was sitting in the driver's seat looking at his phone. When I walked out after my shift, the car was gone. That time, I felt something cold in my stomach, but I pushed it away. Jared and I had been best friends since 6th grade. His dad coached our little league team and drove us to tournaments. He was the kind of dad who remembered your birthday and asked about your grades. There was no reason for him to follow me. I was being paranoid. The third time happened at the mall. I was shopping for new shoes with my sister Ashley when I saw Mr. Whitmore standing near the food court. He was watching the entrance to the store I'd just left. Our eyes met for a second before he turned and walked away fast. Ashley asked who that was. I told her nobody, and felt my hands start shaking. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all 3 incidents and trying to convince myself they were coincidences. But 3 times in 2 weeks felt like more than chance. The next day at school, I pulled Jared aside after lunch. He was laughing about something that happened in chemistry class. I asked him if his dad mentioned seeing me around town lately. Jared looked confused and said no, asked why I was asking. I made up something about thinking I saw his dad's car. Jared shrugged and said his dad had been working late a lot recently, something about a big project at his job. I nodded and changed the subject, but the cold feeling in my stomach got worse. Mr. Whitmore worked as a project manager for a construction company. He wore polo shirts and khakis and talked about building codes at dinner. Jared's mom left when we were in 8th grade, just packed her stuff one day and moved across the country. Jared didn't talk about it much, but I knew it messed him up. After she left, Mr. Whitmore became even more involved in Jared's life. He came to every game and every school event. People said he was a great single dad. I'd spent hundreds of hours at their house over the years. Mr. Whitmore made us dinner and helped with homework and drove us places. He felt like a second father to me, which made the following feel even more wrong and confusing. I started paying closer attention after that conversation with Jared. I looked for the silver Nissan everywhere I went. For a week, I didn't see it. I started to relax and think maybe I had been paranoid. Then I saw the car again, parked on the street near my house at 11 p.m. when I was taking out the trash. The engine was running, but the lights were off. I stood there in my driveway holding the garbage bag and staring at the silver Nissan. The windows were tinted so I couldn't see inside, but I knew it was Mr. Whitmore. The car sat there for maybe 2 minutes while my heart hammered in my chest. Then the headlights came on, and the car drove away slowly. I went inside and locked the door. My parents were already asleep. I sat in my room with the lights off, looking out the window for another hour. The car didn't come back. The next morning at breakfast, I told my parents I thought someone was following me. My dad asked who. I said I wasn't sure, but I'd seen the same car multiple times. My mom's face got tight with worry. She asked if I felt unsafe. I said I didn't know. My dad said he'd call the non-emergency police line and ask what to do. He made the call that afternoon, and a police officer came to our house around 5 p.m. Officer Delgado was in his 40s with a tired face. He sat at our kitchen table and took notes while I explained everything. The car following me from practice. The man at the mall. The car outside our house at night. Officer Delgado asked if I had the license plate number. I didn't. He asked if I could describe the driver. I hesitated because I knew exactly who the driver was, but saying it out loud felt impossible. Mr. Whitmore was Jared's dad. He was a respected person in our community. If I accused him of stalking me and I was wrong, it would destroy my friendship with Jared and make me look insane. So I said I couldn't see the driver clearly. Officer Delgado wrote something in his notebook. He said if I saw the car again, I should note the license plate and call the police immediately. He said stalking was a crime, but they needed evidence to investigate. He gave me his card and told me to be aware of my surroundings. After he left, my dad said we should install a security camera pointing at our driveway. My mom agreed. They ordered one online, and it arrived 2 days later. My dad installed it that weekend while I helped hold the ladder. The camera recorded motion and sent alerts to our phones. I didn't tell Jared any of this. At school, he acted normal. We ate lunch together and complained about our English teacher and made plans to see a movie on Saturday. I wanted to believe I was wrong about his dad. Maybe the silver Nissan I kept seeing belonged to someone else. Maybe Mr. Whitmore just happened to be in the same place as I was. But then the camera caught something. It was a Wednesday night at 1:30 a.m. when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I grabbed it and opened the camera app. The footage showed a silver Nissan parked on the street in front of our house. The car sat there for 7 minutes before driving away. The timestamp was clear. The license plate was visible. I screenshot everything and lay awake until morning staring at the images. The license plate matched Mr. Whitmore's car. There was no more room for doubt or coincidence. Jared's dad was following me and watching my house in the middle of the night. I needed to know why. The next day, I skipped 4th period and went to the library computer lab. I searched for Mr. Whitmore's name online looking for anything that might explain his behavior. His LinkedIn showed he'd worked at the same construction company for 15 years. His Facebook was private. There were a few photos from charity events where he posed with other business people holding oversized checks. Nothing seemed unusual or threatening. Then I found an old news article from 7 months ago. A 16-year-old girl named Bethany Rourke went missing from a town 30 miles away. She was last seen leaving a restaurant where she worked as a hostess. Her car was found abandoned at a rest stop with her phone still inside. Police said they had no leads. The article included her photo. She had dark hair and was wearing her work uniform. I stared at the photo for a long time before closing the browser. I didn't know why I'd looked up missing persons cases, some instinct I couldn't name. That night at dinner, I barely ate. My mom asked if I was feeling okay. I said I was fine, just tired. She exchanged a look with my dad. They'd been worried about me since the whole following situation started. After dinner, I went to my room and pulled up the missing girl's photo again. Something about it bothered me, but I couldn't figure out what. I closed my laptop and tried to do homework, but I couldn't focus. Around 9 p.m., Jared texted asking if I wanted to come over this weekend and play video games. His dad would order pizza. The message made my skin crawl. I responded saying I was busy and turned off my phone. The next morning, I went to the police station before school. Officer Delgado was at his desk drinking coffee. I showed him the security camera footage and the screenshots with Mr. Whitmore's license plate. His expression changed immediately from bored to focused. He asked how I knew whose car it was. I told him it belonged to my best friend's father. He asked if there was any reason Mr. Whitmore would be monitoring my house. I said I had no idea. Officer Delgado made copies of everything and said he'd look into it. He asked if I felt I was in immediate danger. I said I didn't know. He asked if Mr. Whitmore had ever acted inappropriately toward me. The question made my stomach turn because I knew what he was implying. I said no, nothing sexual or violent. Mr. Whitmore had always been normal and friendly. That's what made this so confusing. Officer Delgado wrote more notes and said he'd talk to Mr. Whitmore about the surveillance. He told me to call 911 immediately if I felt threatened. I left the station feeling sick. I just reported my best friend's dad to the police. Jared would find out eventually. Our friendship was probably over. But I couldn't ignore someone parking outside my house at 1:30 a.m. That wasn't normal behavior. Something was very wrong. That afternoon, Jared confronted me in the parking lot after school. His face was red and his hands were clenched into fists. He asked why the police came to his house asking about his dad following me around. His voice was loud enough that other students stopped and stared. I tried to stay calm and explain about the security footage. Jared cut me off and said I was insane. His dad would never do something creepy. I was making things up for attention, or because I was jealous that he had a dad who actually cared about him. That last part hit hard because my own dad worked constantly and barely came to my games. Jared said we weren't friends anymore and told me to stay away from his family. He walked away before I could respond. I stood there in the parking lot feeling like I'd been punched. Other students were whispering and pulling out their phones. By the time I got home, texts were coming in from people asking what happened with Jared's dad. I ignored all of them. My mom was waiting when I walked in. She'd gotten a call from Jared's dad. Mr. Whitmore told her the police questioned him about some misunderstanding involving me. He said he'd been driving through our neighborhood for work-related site visits, and I must have seen his car and gotten confused. He assured my mom he had no reason to follow me and was concerned I was making false accusations. My mom asked if I was absolutely sure about what I'd seen. I showed her the security footage again, the timestamp of 1:30 a.m., the license plate, the 7 minutes of the car sitting motionless on our street. I asked her what work-related site visits happened at 1:30 in the morning. My mom's face went pale. She called my dad and told him to come home from work immediately. When he arrived, we all watched the footage together on the living room TV. My dad said we needed to file a formal police report and get a restraining order. He called Officer Delgado and demanded to know what was being done about Mr. Whitmore. The officer said they'd questioned him and he denied everything. Without proof of intent or threat, there wasn't much they could do. My dad's voice got louder. He said a grown man parking outside our house in the middle of the night was proof enough. Officer Delgado said he understood our concern and would increase patrols in our neighborhood. He recommended we document everything and contact them if Mr. Whitmore made any direct contact. My dad hung up and said we were getting better locks and he was taking time off work to be home more. For the next week, I didn't see Mr. Whitmore or his car. At school, Jared avoided me completely. He sat on the opposite side of the cafeteria and changed routes to class so we wouldn't cross paths. His friends glared at me in the hallways. People whispered about the whole situation. Some kids thought I was lying for attention. Others thought Mr. Whitmore was a predator. The rumors got worse each day until I wanted to stop going to school entirely. But my parents insisted I maintain my normal schedule and not let fear control my life. Ashley, my 14-year-old sister, asked me one night if Mr. Whitmore had ever been creepy to me. I said no. He'd always been nice and normal. She asked why he'd follow me then. I said I didn't know. She said it didn't make sense, and maybe there was something I wasn't remembering. That stuck with me. I lay awake that night trying to remember every interaction I'd had with Mr. Whitmore. Every time he drove me home, every dinner at Jared's house, every conversation in their garage or backyard. Nothing stood out as weird or uncomfortable. Then I remembered something. 3 months ago, I'd been at Jared's house playing video games. Mr. Whitmore asked if I wanted to ride with him to pick up food. Jared was in the middle of a raid and didn't want to pause, so I went alone. On the drive to the restaurant, Mr. Whitmore asked how school was going. Normal small talk. We got the food and started driving back. Then Mr. Whitmore pulled into a rest stop and said he needed to check something in the trunk. He got out, and I sat in the passenger seat scrolling through my phone. Through the window, I saw a girl at the rest stop picnic area. She looked upset, crying and pacing. She was young, maybe 16 or 17. I watched her for a minute, wondering if she was okay. Then Mr. Whitmore got back in the car and we drove away. I'd completely forgotten about it until now, but something about that memory made my hands go cold. The crying girl at the rest stop, where Bethany Rourke's car was found abandoned. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the news article again. The photo of Bethany wearing her work uniform. Dark hair, thin build, the same age range as the girl I'd seen crying at the rest stop. I tried to remember more details. What day had that happened? What time? It had been a Friday night around 8 p.m., 3 months ago. The article about Bethany said she disappeared 7 months ago, so the timeline didn't match. But my brain was screaming at me that these two things were connected somehow. I pulled up more articles about Bethany Rourke. One mentioned that investigators believed she'd been at the rest stop, meeting someone. Her phone records showed she'd received calls from an unknown number in the days before she disappeared. Police couldn't trace it. Another article from 2 months after her disappearance said investigators had no leads, and the case had gone cold. I searched for other missing persons cases in the area. Found 3 more girls in the past 2 years. All teenagers. All last seen in public places before vanishing. Police had no suspects and no bodies. The cases were unsolved. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I went downstairs where my parents were watching TV. I told them I needed to talk to Officer Delgado immediately. My dad looked at my face and didn't ask questions. He called the officer's cell phone. Officer Delgado met us at the police station at 9 p.m. I brought my laptop and pulled up all the articles about missing girls. I told him about seeing the crying girl at the rest stop 3 months ago while I was with Mr. Whitmore. I described her appearance and the timeline. Officer Delgado's expression changed from professional courtesy to genuine concern. He asked if I'd told anyone about seeing the girl. I said no, I'd forgotten about it until tonight. He asked if Mr. Whitmore knew I'd seen her. I said I didn't think so. I'd been looking at my phone most of the time. But then I realized I'd looked up from my phone and stared at her for maybe 30 seconds while Mr. Whitmore was at the trunk. If he'd been watching me in the rearview mirror, he would have seen me notice her. Officer Delgado asked me to describe exactly what the girl looked like. I closed my eyes and tried to remember. Dark hair pulled back, crying, wearing jeans and a hoodie. She'd been pacing near the picnic tables, young, teenage. That's all I could remember. Officer Delgado pulled up files on his computer. He showed me photos of the missing girls, 4 faces. I stared at each one carefully. The third photo made my heart stop. It was the crying girl from the rest stop. Her name was Kimberly Valdez. She was 17 years old. She went missing 4 months ago after telling her parents she was going to meet a friend. Her car was found at a different rest stop 20 miles away. Security footage showed her getting into an unknown vehicle, but the plates weren't visible. The case was still open with no leads. Officer Delgado asked if I was absolutely certain this was the girl I'd seen. I said yes. I would never forget her face now. She'd been crying at the rest stop that night while I sat in Mr. Whitmore's car, and 3 months later, she disappeared. Officer Delgado stood up and made several phone calls. He spoke in low, urgent tones to people I couldn't hear. Then he came back and said they needed me to give a formal statement. A detective would interview me tomorrow morning. They were opening an investigation into Mr. Whitmore. I asked if I was in danger. He said they'd put a protection detail on my house and a patrol car would be stationed on my street. He told my parents not to let me go anywhere alone. My dad's face had gone completely white. He asked if they really thought Mr. Whitmore was involved in these disappearances. Officer Delgado said they couldn't comment on an ongoing investigation, but we should take precautions. That night, a patrol car parked in front of our house. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Kimberly Valdez crying at the rest stop, while I sat 50 feet away in a car with a man who might have hurt her. I'd seen her and done nothing. I didn't know she needed help. But if Mr. Whitmore was involved in her disappearance, and if he'd seen me notice her, then he'd been following me for months to figure out if I remembered, if I'd say anything, if I was a threat. The following wasn't random stalking. It was threat assessment. He was deciding whether to let me live or make me disappear too. I threw up twice before morning. When the detective interviewed me the next day, I told her everything. Detective Iris Browning was in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She recorded the interview and took detailed notes. She asked me to describe the rest stop, the time of day, the weather, what Mr. Whitmore was wearing, what I was doing, how long we were there, and every single detail about the crying girl. I answered everything as accurately as I could. Then she asked about my relationship with Mr. Whitmore, how long I'd known him, how often I was at his house, whether he'd ever been inappropriate. I said never. He'd been like a father figure, normal in every way. Detective Browning asked if Mr. Whitmore knew I was giving this statement. I said I didn't know. She said they'd been surveilling his house since last night. He hadn't left. His car was in the driveway. She asked if I'd be willing to testify if the case went to trial. I said yes. She said I'd probably need protection if Mr. Whitmore was arrested. Witnesses in cases like this sometimes became targets. My stomach dropped. I asked what she meant by cases like this. She said they were investigating Mr. Whitmore's possible involvement in multiple missing persons cases. If he was responsible, and if he knew I could connect him to one of the victims, I was a liability. They needed to move fast. She thanked me for coming forward and said a protection detail would stay on my house. She gave me her card and said to call her immediately if I remembered anything else, or if Mr. Whitmore tried to contact me. When we left the station, there were 2 patrol cars outside. One followed us home. My dad drove in complete silence. My mom held my hand in the back seat. Ashley stared out the window. Nobody said anything until we were inside with the doors locked. At school the next day, everyone knew something was happening. Police cars outside our house. Rumors about Mr. Whitmore being investigated. Jared didn't show up. The school counselor called me out of second period and asked if I was okay. I said yes, even though I wasn't. She said my teachers were informed I might need extensions on assignments. She offered to excuse me from classes if I needed space. I said I wanted to stay busy and keep my routine normal. She nodded and said her door was always open. At lunch, I sat alone. People stared, but nobody approached me. I checked my phone and saw a text from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake. You don't know what you're doing." My hands started shaking. I went straight to the office and showed the counselor. She called the police immediately. Officer Delgado arrived within 10 minutes. He looked at the text and asked if I recognized the number. I didn't. He said they'd trace it. He asked if anyone had approached me today. I said no. He said they were assigning a plainclothes officer to watch the school. I shouldn't worry, but I should be alert. I went home after lunch. My parents picked me up and we drove past 3 police cars positioned around our neighborhood. That night, Detective Browning called my dad. They were executing a search warrant on Mr. Whitmore's house. They'd arrested him an hour ago on suspicion of stalking based on the security footage. They needed time to process evidence before they could file additional charges. My dad asked if we were safe. She said yes. Mr. Whitmore was in custody and would be denied bail given the nature of the investigation. She said she'd update us as things developed. The local news ran a story that night. A man arrested in connection to stalking allegations. They didn't name Mr. Whitmore yet, but they showed footage of police cars outside his house. My phone started blowing up with texts from people at school. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. I turned off my phone and tried to eat dinner. The food tasted like cardboard. Ashley asked if Jared hated me now. I said probably. She said it wasn't my fault. If Mr. Whitmore did something bad, telling the police was the right thing. But it still felt like I'd destroyed my best friend's life. Jared's dad was in jail. His mom was gone. He had nobody left. And I was the reason. The investigation moved fast. Detective Browning called 3 days later and asked if I could come to the station. They'd found something in Mr. Whitmore's house. I went with my parents and a lawyer my dad hired. In the interview room, Detective Browning laid out photos on the table. Surveillance photos, hundreds of them. Young girls at rest stops, gas stations, restaurants, and parking lots. Different girls in different locations. All looked like teenagers. All looked vulnerable or alone. Some of the photos were marked with dates and notes. Mr. Whitmore had been stalking multiple girls over several years. He'd developed a system for identifying targets. Then Detective Browning showed me photos from a locked file cabinet in Mr. Whitmore's garage. Personal items belonging to the missing girls. A necklace, a phone case, a hair clip, a wallet. These were trophies. Evidence that Mr. Whitmore had taken these girls. The room started spinning. I asked where the girls were. Detective Browning's face was grim. She said they were still investigating. They'd brought in cadaver dogs to search properties associated with Mr. Whitmore. They'd interviewed his coworkers and accessed his work records to see which construction sites he'd been to. It was possible he'd used his job to scout locations. My lawyer asked if I needed to be present for this. Detective Browning said no, but she wanted me to understand the scope of what I'd helped uncover. If I hadn't come forward about seeing Kimberly Valdez at the rest stop, they might never have connected Mr. Whitmore to the missing girls. My testimony had given them probable cause to search his house. The evidence they found there would likely put him away for the rest of his life. I asked if they'd found Kimberly. Detective Browning shook her head. They were still searching, but they had enough evidence to charge Mr. Whitmore with kidnapping and murder, even without recovering bodies. The surveillance photos showed clear patterns of stalking. The trophies proved he'd been in possession of the victim's property. Combined with cell tower data placing him near the disappearance sites, the case against him was strong. They were building charges related to 4 missing girls. More might be coming as they processed evidence. I left the station feeling sick. Mr. Whitmore had been hunting teenage girls for years, while coaching Little League and hosting pizza parties. He'd been at my house for dinners, he'd driven me places, he'd seemed normal and kind, and all the while, he was a predator. The news broke the next day. Kenneth Whitmore arrested in connection to multiple missing persons cases. Police found evidence linking him to at least 4 victims. The story went national within hours. Reporters showed up at our house asking for interviews. My parents refused all requests. School became impossible. Everyone stared at me constantly. Some kids treated me as a hero for helping catch a serial killer. Others blamed me for destroying Jared's life. Jared himself didn't come back to school. I heard he'd moved in with his aunt in another state. I wanted to reach out and apologize, but my lawyer said I couldn't contact anyone in the Whitmore family. It might complicate the case. So I just lived with the guilt of knowing my best friend's life had been destroyed because I'd noticed a crying girl at a rest stop. 3 weeks later, they found Kimberly Valdez. Her body was buried on a construction site Mr. Whitmore's company had abandoned a year ago. Detective Browning called to tell me before the news reported it. She said Kimberly's family wanted to thank me for helping bring her home. They knew I'd seen her alive and tried to help. That helped them somehow. I cried for an hour after that call. The trial started 6 months later. I testified about seeing Kimberly at the rest stop, about Mr. Whitmore's behavior afterward, about the surveillance footage. The defense tried to discredit me, saying I'd misidentified the girl or fabricated the story to explain why a family friend was monitoring me. But the physical evidence was overwhelming. The surveillance photos, the trophies, the cell tower data, the DNA evidence from Kimberly's burial site. The jury convicted Mr. Whitmore on 4 counts of kidnapping and 3 counts of murder. They never found the 4th girl. He was sentenced to life without parole. At the sentencing, families of the victims spoke. Kimberly's mother looked directly at me and said thank you. Her daughter could finally rest now because one person had paid attention and spoken up. That statement broke something open in my chest. I'd been carrying so much guilt about Jared and about not doing more when I saw Kimberly crying. But her mother said I'd given her family closure. That had to mean something. After the trial, Detective Browning told me they'd identified 2 more potential victims from years earlier. Mr. Whitmore's hunting had been going on longer than anyone realized. He'd been very careful, very patient. Without my testimony connecting him to Kimberly, they might never have stopped him. Jared and I never spoke again. I tried to write him a letter once, but I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry your dad was a monster. I'm sorry I destroyed your life by telling the truth. Nothing felt right, so I sent nothing. I heard from mutual friends that he'd changed his last name and was seeing a therapist 3 times a week. I hoped he'd be okay eventually. I went to therapy too. Nightmares about the crying girl and what might have happened if I hadn't looked up from my phone that night. Guilt about the girls who disappeared before I said anything. Anger at Mr. Whitmore for betraying everyone who trusted him. The therapist helped me understand that I'd done the right thing, that staying silent would have been worse, that more girls might have died if I hadn't spoken up. My parents were proud of me, though I could see the fear in their eyes whenever I left the house. Ashley told me I was brave, though I didn't feel brave. I felt like I'd stumbled into something terrible and barely survived. School eventually returned to normal. People stopped staring. New gossip replaced old gossip. I graduated and went to college 3 states away, where nobody knew who I was or what had happened. But I never forgot Kimberly Valdez crying at that rest stop. And I made a decision after everything. I became a victim's advocate, helping families navigate investigations and trials when their loved ones went missing. I couldn't bring those girls back, but I could help others find answers. That felt like the only way to make meaning from something so senseless. Mr. Whitmore is still in prison. He'll die there. Jared built a new life. The family's got some closure, though the kind of closure that comes with buried children. And I learned that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they coach your little league team and make you dinner and seem like the best dad in the world right up until you realize they've been hunting children for years. The silver Nissan following me wasn't random. It was a predator, deciding if I knew too much to live. And the only reason I'm alive to tell this story is because I spoke up before he decided I was too dangerous to let walk around. 3 years later, I can finally sleep through most nights without waking up thinking about that crying girl and wondering what would have happened if I'd looked away instead of watching her for those 30 seconds. Those 30 seconds that changed everything. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.